just sides. So on Tuesday, when you come back, I'm expecting you to know how to use the cosine law using sides or finding angles, okay? So one thing I want you to remember is that when you're trying to find a certain side, right? Like let's say it's an SAS scenario. You're going to want to find the side, the only side that's still left to find. And so you got to make sure the angle across from it shows up here. And basically what you need to remember is that the other two sides, right, they're squared and added. And then these two sides show up again here in your formula and they're being multiplied. So more than remembering the actual letters, I just want you to look at the pattern. If you want to find a side, take the other two sides that are known, right? These two sides, plug them in, square them. Then you go minus 2 times b times c times cosine of a. So, and if you have a good calculator, that's going to come a long way to help you out there, okay? So let's go back to 277 and actually work through that question there. If you have highlighters, if you have up to 3 highlighters, that'd be ideal. I'm going to really emphasize things on this example because remember, I'm teaching as if you're going to keep this in your binder for a month or 2, and then you're going to come back and you'll be like, wait a minute, how was this done again? And so I want to make sure it stands out, okay? So here we go. SAS, right? So we know that we have both sides and the angle in between. So this is one of these cases. You know you're going to have to use the cosine law. I would strongly recommend you write down at least one version of the formula for SAS and write down at least one version of the formula for the other one, the SSS, which you're going to do later, on your study sheet with the colors and everything. Okay, so I also will mention that there's no pair, comma, cannot use sine law. Okay. That's so either you remember it's SAS cosine law, or you just remember it's like, oh, there is no pair. I guess that must be cosine law. So let's start this. So if you want to find this side, it's the only side you cannot find, or that you need to find, sorry. You start with it, y squared is equal to the other two sides squared and added. So 12.3 squared plus 12.1 squared minus 2 times the first side you used times the second side. And then it's cosine of the only angle that's there. And remember this, when you look at it this way with squares and stuff, it's cosine law. Don't put a sign there. Some students put a sign and then everything is wrong, right? So this is how I'm going to highlight. First of all, the angle. I'm going to highlight that for sure because that needs to stand out. I'm going to take this side and give it that color. Whatever you have is good. So making sure 12.3 shows up there and it shows up there. And my third, this side shows up there and it shows up there. Okay. And now you can actually do the calculation. So y equals is going to be the square root of whatever I get if I type this in. So make sure you use your calculators to do that. Some of you have a different, I think what I'm going to do here, some of you might appreciate this. I will use my cell phone to try to do this. I don't think I can in one shot. but you get 73.053, and I'm using all decimals. So all I have to do is take the square root of my answer, and I get 8.55 centimeters. Okay. 3 lines, done. You found that side. Do you have a pair now? The question, do you have a pair now? Can you use sine law from now on if you wanted to solve for more things? Yes, absolutely. Once you have a pair, I will add that. Now have a pair, comma. So we could use sine law to solve triangle. Okay, that's just a big note there for you to try, or to at least know that, right? Keep that in mind. Anything else I need to mention here? I think we're good. So now I want you to give that second question here a try right now based on what we've just done. Oh, absolutely. Can you try this question down here? See if you can do it based on what we've just looked. Let's try this. And I will also highlight something here that you could actually have used sine law if you caught it, but not just yet. So sine side, angle side. So right, because I'm teaching as if we're mixing everything up. So side, angle side. So we can call this lowercase c. This is lowercase b, lowercase a, right? Using the letters that are there. Folks, if there are no letters, just give it letters, right? ABC is the safest way. So side C squared is going to be the other two sides. They happen to be the same, but it still works. 2 times the first side times the second side, and then it's cosine of 80 degrees. And some of you need to do this in steps because your calculators just don't have the 2 lines, right? So it's 152 squared minus 2 times 152 times 152 times cosine of 80. So this is what goes in the square root. Dot, dot, dot. I take the square root as it is and hit equal. It will automatically take the square root of your answer. This is 41 if you round it to 2 decimals. If you want to get full marks, it should be 41. Okay. Question? No? Okay. Ask if you have a question. Okay. How could you have used the sine law here? What kind of a triangle is this? Isosceles triangle. Yeah, that's right. Gino, you said it, right? Yeah, there we go. So this, what does that mean? The angles across those two are going to be the same. So if all three add up to 180, you take away the 80, what are you left with? 100. You split the 100 evenly and amongst the two, you get 50-50, right? So do you have pairs there? You would have had pairs. So if you caught that, hey, it would have been easier, maybe easier. I don't know, maybe you like the cosine law. That's fine. But just keep that in mind, right? Like, but I will be just fine. I will never make you use one over the other, okay? You will decide that for yourselves. I will skip this one for now. Just like I skipped a whole bunch of questions for sine law, I'm coming back to them later. I feel like if I give you a bunch of examples, then we can cover it all and then mix it up. So we're going to do this part here, solving for angles using the cosine law. That is worth highlighting because it's actually, I should have used a bigger font or underlined that, but this is important, right? So solving for angles. And this is the only time you can use this. It's the side, right? Where you know all three sides. Right? That's when you're going to use this formula right here. Still cosine law, but you're solving for angles. That's the only thing you can solve, right? And so the first question is saying calculate the size or the measure of angle P. So they want this one. I want you to make note of this. Okay, go ahead. This is the longest side, which means that you're going to have the largest angle across from it. Okay, always keep that in mind that P has to be the biggest angle of all because it's across the longest side. Okay. I also want you to do this, lowercase q here, lowercase r there, and this obviously is lowercase p. We're going to put that right there so that I know that my side lengths are labeled. And so to find p, you have to start like this. Cosine of angle p is going to be equal to, what's important when you do one of these is perhaps to start with this part. The formula calls for negative, I'm going to use a different color, just like I did in the formula, and now I can't even erase it because I pressed too hard. There we go. I'm going to go minus p squared because it's across, that side needs to be subtracted from the top there. And so you take the other two sides, r and q, and just add, square and add them. Okay, so it's the other two sides that go there. At the bottom, you have 2 times r times q. Okay, I will highlight angle P here and side P there. They are opposite to each other on the diagram, and P only shows up once. Make note of that. RQ, the first two that are added, those are the ones that show up in the denominator. P doesn't show up again. Cosine of P is equal to R squared plus Q squared minus 31.2 squared. And then at the bottom, it's just 2 times 21.6 times 16.9. I hope you can see that. I've requested a bigger screen. Let's see if they grant that. Okay. Maybe if you see one of the administrators, just tell them, you know what, it'd be nice to have a bigger screen in cabin 3 in particular. Okay. Watch this carefully. Look up on the screen once. What do you get? What is particular about this answer? Negative. Very important. Don't drop it. Okay. So if it's negative, there's nothing wrong with it. I will actually make a note of that. So the top gets you a negative 221.27. The denominator, I just go 2 times 21.6 times 16.9, I should say. That's 730.08. Please include all decimals. You will have 4 sometimes. Okay, use them all. And to save room, I'm just going to go right beside it and just divide these two. So you have to go negative 221.27 divided by 730.08. And that is this. And I leave that on my screen. Do not clear it. But on the paper, you're going to show me a little bit of a trail, right? How come it's negative? You should get negative if you type this in. Because you end up with minus 31.2, which is a big number. So you end up with a negative result here. Try it again. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go angle P. What did we do with sine law when we wanted to find the angle? We used the inverse, right? So we're going to use the inverse of cosine, and we're going to insert our number in there. Angle P. So watch on my screen, I leave it. I just go shift or second, whatever your calculator needs to do. Cos equals. It's 107.64 degrees. Don't forget that. And I'll make a note here. I will highlight the negative all along, okay? And I'll make a note here. It's going to be somewhat tight there. A negative value results in an obtuse angle. Please write that down, because I'm going to test you on this. A negative value results, obtuse is bigger than 90, right? So watch this. I'm going to take my calculator. I'm going to go up here. Okay, equals. I'm going to clear this. If I had gone inverse cosine and just typed in this 30/30, but it's positive, you're going to get a different answer. So don't drop the negative. Okay. Block this off here. And we're now on the way to find angle Q. And so B here, we're going to go cosine of angle Q is going to be, whatever you do, you're going to have the negative Q squared right across from it, and then the other two sides, P squared plus R squared in front, and then it's 2 times P times R, cosine of Q, plug in your values. 31.2 squared plus 21.6 squared minus 16.9 squared. 2 times 31.2, 21.6. Cosine of Q. Let's figure out what the top is. 31.2 squared plus 21.6 squared. 1,154.39. And the bottom gets you 1347.84. And I always like to write down next to it what this would be if you divided it. So it's 1154.39 divided by 1347.84. That's 0.8 6 dot 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 angle Q is going to be the inverse of that. What kind of an angle am I expecting? Obtuse or acute? If you had crickets, I'd hear them right about now. Acute, right? Yeah. So I keep this on my calculator. I go shift cos, and that's 31.08 degrees. And I'll make an arrow here. Positive value. Therefore, acute angle. Positive value, therefore acute angle. Could I now find angle R quite easily? Yeah. You know what that would do? You would solve the triangle. That's what solving the triangle is. I'm going to leave that up there for a bit. And then I'm going to ask you to practice this right away. This is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to assign a couple of questions on angles. Listen carefully. And then when you're done that, you're going to do the question right above this, going back to yesterday's stuff. So you practice both today. So flip over. We're going to do this triangle fun. We're going to do that a little later. Just go to 4. So solve each triangle, it says on page 279, right? What does solve each triangle mean? Find all angles. Find all sides. This is already done. These examples, you're going to already know all 3 sides anyways. So you have to find all angles for these 2 questions here. Space out your work accordingly, otherwise you're going to run out of space. So you kind of have to start somewhere and then move over to the right, whatever you need to do. So those 2 triangles, and then go back and do that question that's above the example we just did. All right, I'll pause it there. So just make sure you get those answers down quickly, because I'm going to go over to another example. So write those numbers down. Make sure you have the degree symbol. You have write the correct letter, not just the numbers. If the letters and the numbers don't jive, then you're not solving the side you're supposed to solve. And show your work, right? Like, look how I always show how I get that third angle, right? Show it somehow. Make sure that you don't drop a negative. The triangles are usually not drawn to scale, but you can kind of tell if it's supposed to be obtuse, right? So some of you had very minor mistakes, easy to solve. Can I just remind you that this side here will be across the angle you're trying to solve, and then the other 2 sides are the ones that show up here. That's very important. If you have the 165 down here somewhere, then it's off, right? So focus on the pattern, not necessarily the formula, right? Focus on the pattern. So if you can go back and highlight your formula and make sure, maybe have a diagram of a triangle and highlight what you're putting in, that will probably be very helpful. And on your study sheet, may I suggest that you add the fact that if it's a negative for cosine law, that it's going to be an obtuse angle. It doesn't, sine law doesn't have negatives, like sine law doesn't know the difference. Cosine does. All right. So now, oh yeah, what time is it? 3:15. I want to do this one, and then if time allows, I'll go over the question I made you do. So this one is at the top of 279. I need you to be able to draw a triangle if I give you information. So please follow along. 279 at the top. I don't need you to draw it to scale. I don't even need it to look like it should. As long as you have a triangle with the information where it's supposed to, you're golden, right? Okay, you're following? You should write this down. Okay, so triangle fun, sometimes we use this symbol, has the following dimensions, right? This is an angle, another angle, a side. Draw the diagram, then solve the triangle. So I would suggest you just draw a generic. It shouldn't be symmetrical necessarily, but you just start at a corner and go clockwise. Doesn't matter which corner you start. Yours may look different, but ultimately we will all have the same triangle. So then you put down 42 degrees here. N is 36. And U is 3742 inches. Got it? It doesn't matter what the triangle looks like. As long as you have the letters, you could have started on this corner if you wanted, and then went clockwise. You still end up with the same triangle. It's just flipped. Okay? Question. 279, top of 279. How would you solve this? Don't yell it out just yet. Think about it. It's SAS, you think? Are there two A's? Yeah. Yes. Did you hear that? Uh, Alora said, find the sum of triangles equal to 180, that property, to find this angle, right? Because you have two, then you have a pair. You agree with that? Sine law? This is sine law, folks. Because look at this. If you look at cosine, which one are the only two that you can solve using cosine? It's this one, and it's this one. None of these have two angles given, do they? Right? So it's not this and it's not that. This is actually sine law. So I call this hidden pair. So I'm going to find angle U is going to be 180 minus 42. And we're going to solve the triangle. So write this down because these are more challenging in a sense because you have to actually draw your own triangle, right? So 180 minus 42 minus 36, that's 102. Underline, okay? Actually, box, because this solving the triangle means you got to solve all angles, all sides. So now you have 102 in here, right? You solve for that, and you have a pair. Let's circle it like that. Pair, therefore, sine law. So I want you to start thinking, I could use sine law or cosine law. It depends on the situation. Okay? Now, we're starting. Do you remember how to use the sine law? I hope so. Sine of 102 over 37.42 inches. Now, notation is important. Does it matter which one you solve first? No, it doesn't. So if you go with sine of 42, what are you going to have down here? What letter? F. That's right. Cross multiply and divide. side F, I always, guys, pay attention. I always calculate this with you. I tend to not look at my key. That way I slow down to your speed as you're writing this down. Okay, so that's why I do that. So that's 25 point. How would you round this, guys? I need help. 60, right? Yeah, because that 8 bumps the 9 to a 10, which bumps that to a 6. So that's 60. By the time, let's turn it off. Amrinder, was that you or? Okay. Uh, it's inches. It's a side. So there we go. What else do we need to do? We need to solve for n. Yes. So we've got two things done. So solve for n. Sine of 102. I'm going to use sine law. Could you use cosine law? Yeah. Hey, some of you are like, I don't know, this is a trick question. This is a trick question. Am I going to get embarrassed? No. Because you now know f, you actually have a SAS on this corner, don't you? Right? SAS. So you could use cosine law. You can feel free to do that. I don't know. I don't have a preference. It just whatever works for you is what you should go with. Most students, I think, tend to they prefer sine law, but you can do this. So on Tuesday, I'll probably AC you only on cosine law. And then we're gonna start mixing it up. Then we're gonna choose, you're gonna have to choose which one it is. So here, this one is 22.49 inches. Hold on. You will check. Which one is the biggest angle? 102. Is that the longest side out of the three sides? Yes, it is. And then 42 is the second, or like the middle. So side F should be the middle, which it is. Check, check. Okay? Are you done already? I think you're done, right? You're done. You're ready for the weekend, right? Okay, I'll close it here. Just remain seated.